Hello, peeps. Welcome to the Culture and People cast. We're like glasses twins today. This is so great. Today we have Beth Cole. Beth, in a few sentences, would you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Beth Cole. I am a program manager with the digital innovation team at Northwestern Mutual, which means that I get to explore and run programs to contribute to our tech ecosystem and our startup ecosystem here in Milwaukee. Prior to that, I worked in educational publishing, which was also a lot of fun. And I'm also a mom of two, so juggling that as well during these strange times.
Oh my goodness. And Beth and I met when you were on a panel for Women's
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship Week, and I was facilitating that panel on innovation at work. And I think we had all parents, maybe, it was all women, Women's Entrepreneurship Week. And yeah, I just thought your contributions to the world of work and humanity were so great. I'm so glad that you were on the show today. And I'm sending you love as a mama during this pandemic.
Oh, thank you. All of the parents need it
Yes, they
for sure.
do. Oh my goodness. And it's not to say that one population has it harder, because I had an employee, all my employees are single with no children now. Yes. So they, that's a whole other thing, right? The loneliness and all the other things, I don't get lonely. There's no possible way because they're always around. So I do think, though, as we look at the pandemic and think about the aspects of this work, engagement is a part of that, Beth, right? Where it's like, how do we engage during normal times, but also during this interesting time? So I just love your thoughts, because I'm hearing from leaders that it's a challenge. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting question and very relevant for my experience during
Mhm.
this pandemic. I started at Northwestern Mutual in May. So I've now been working there for almost a year and have yet to set foot in the office, have yet to meet any of my coworkers face to face. So it is really, in terms of engagement, you need to be trying new things and experimenting. And I've been sort of putting myself out there in terms of connecting with my coworkers, in terms of connecting with other community members that I've been working with over the past few months. We have to get a little creative. I know my team at Northwestern Mutual, we've been using Zoom filters, and we've been coming up with themed happy hours. It takes more effort to connect in a meaningful way during these times. But in some ways that provides an opportunity for growth in terms of connection, in terms of listening. You have to be much more attentive. If I only have a half hour with one of my coworkers a week rather than seeing them every day, I have to be much more intentional about what I'm getting out of that conversation, much more attentive to what they're saying, maybe pushing a little bit harder in terms of getting a sense of where they stand, how they're feeling that week. It may not come up organically in the same way that it would in an office.
Yeah, agreed. I love that, the thought that we have to be more intentional because we have less time. And that, I hope maybe the outcome of that is that we would be more present, because we know we have less time. We don't get those drive-bys, those little like nods in the hallway. We don't get any of that, right? So I love that, because presence is, I think, lacking often in the workplace and life too. But that's a really good sense of that, Beth. I'm curious, your perspective is so unique, because I don't think I put that together, that you started after the pandemic. So what, technically, you're putting yourself out there, tactically speaking, like what could that look like? Like what advice could you give to that person, even if they were in person and now aren't, if they just started, it doesn't matter. What can somebody do to deepen their connections and really, I'd say, tether themselves to more people inside their company?
Well, we already kind of touched on intentionality, but that for sure is a piece of it. Sometimes, we talked about those times when you might run into someone in the hall, in grabbing coffee. We don't have those. So you have to put time on someone's calendar if you want to connect with them. And also just exploring other mediums for connection and this is something that I did before the pandemic too, in terms of embracing the culture of the people that you work with, understanding which modes of communication work best for each of your coworkers, because it's
Mhm.
different from person to person. Some people really appreciate a phone call, and you're not going to get the same kind of information out of them via email or via Slack. Other people, Slack is where it's at. They want to have a conversation there. They want some emojis thrown their way.
Yeah.
And understanding kind of, you can't always use the form of communication that someone wants to in the business world to be
Mhm.
effective, but understanding where people really shine and how you can connect with them on their level, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think that preferences is so critical because we have maybe a need to move to more asynchronous, which I think in some ways is helpful because maybe we'll have less meetings, I hope. And then we'll really discover what meaningful conversation and strategic dialogue looks like. But what other tools have you used? So you mentioned Slack. My team uses Boxer, which is a walkie-talkie app, because we want to stay out of each other's inboxes and out of each other's text messages. Then it's not, we can go in when we want to check and we can be checked out when we don't. So we have a commitment to check at least once a day, and we have different channels for different topics. Other tools, what are you guys using?
Well, it's funny. Obviously we're doing a lot of Zoom calls.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. I think the other thing, actually, in my personal life, not so much in my professional life, but I've been really into Marco Polo and some of those like asynchronous
Yeah.
video apps. My friends and I have really embraced that, because when you're juggling motherhood and work and pandemic, it's hard to find times that you can connect in person, but you get a little extra seeing someone's face and hearing them talk, and getting a picture into their world. I mean, I think the other thing, this isn't a technology tool or platform so much, but inspiration is such a big part of communicating and getting someone's time right now. And we all need a little extra inspiration during this time. So I think part of my goal in promoting my programs at Northwestern Mutual and outside of Northwestern Mutual is, how do I trigger someone's inspiration? How do I help us align in terms of what we want to achieve, and how this specific program or this specific initiative is going to play into a larger story, a larger initiative or goal.
Yes, tie it back to the why, right? What's the personal
Mhm.
connection? How does their work impact the outcomes? How does the outcome impact their work, right? What's the reciprocal benefit of some of these connections? And I think that's great. I have to give a shout out to your puppy because this is
I
part
know,
of
I'm
being at
sorry.
home. No, don't be sorry. You know how many times my dogs have barked? I have a dog sitting at any minute he could bark. So like shout out to your puppy because this is part of what it means to let each other in each other's homes. It's a very intimate look. And it's like what it looks like physically, like all the sounds. I think it's great, Beth. So like
she's
don't worry about
she's
it. I just
desperate to get in here. I guess she might have
oh
some
right.
thoughts.
She's like, I have thoughts on remote work. Oh my gosh, that's so great. So we talked about like from the employee's perspective, is there anything a leader can do? Anything else a leader could or should do? And I would say leader from like, I'm your people leader to leader of influence, an influence leader inside the organization. Is there any type of extra support that they need to give to their people?
Well, I'll piggyback on the inspiration piece, because I think, to your earlier point, we're all thinking critically about the time that we're spending. There's less of it for some of us, more of it for others. And again, getting back to that why, like I think we're all, and some of the other events that are happening in the world really bring up that why for a lot of us. So I think a lot of us are spending time thinking about, how am I spending my time? What is my inspiration? What are my broader goals? So I think providing that opportunity for your teams, for the people that you work with and the people that you manage, is critical. I've also seen a lot of folks responding to this concept of sort of really checking in on how your people are doing. We all kind of say, how are you doing? But the instinct is not to actually answer that question honestly.
Mm,
And right now, a lot of us need to have a second to answer that question honestly and talk about how we're really doing. So I
mm,
think in terms of managing, taking the time to really get a window into how your people are doing is important.
yeah.
I mean, another thing that we've been doing, I sort of alluded to some of these team happy hours,
Mm,
get-togethers, informal Zoom calls, and other ways of connecting remotely. And I think sometimes it's our instinct to avoid those kinds of things. You know, it's
yeah.
the end of the day, it's 4 o'clock, you just want to get on to the next thing,
Yeah.
you feel burnt out. And I know for me, a lot of times I can dismiss those things as something that isn't a good use of my time, but
Mhm.
it actually is really important to make those connections, and more difficult to do now than ever. So
Agreed. Agreed. So the access is really important, creating opportunities to connect and give access, I think, both to yourself as a leader and to the team. I love that. So let's do two last quick questions, Beth. First one is, who else would you shout out that's doing good work that's advancing people and culture in the workplace?
yeah, so I've been really on a journey in terms of learning more about equity and inclusion. Some of that has certainly been inspired by the events that have taken place over the past year. Some of that is just it happens in my life that this is a time when I'm thinking this way.
Mhm.
So I've had a lot of inspiration from both coworkers inside Northwestern Mutual, people outside of Northwestern Mutual. One of my like key go-tos at Northwestern Mutual is Adam Gabernitz. He and I have been working together on a lot of projects related to equity and inclusion efforts at Northwestern Mutual. And he is always willing to kind of help inform me and improve my processes and my programs. A lot of times actions that we take to improve our own world in that space feel really small and insignificant. But I think it's really important that we all kind of think about what is in my sphere of influence and how do I make changes. So having guidance from people who really know what they're doing and can question you and push you a little is so important. Um, in the same vein, I've been really enjoying some of the podcasts coming out of 88.9, exploring some of the impacts on equity in our community here in Milwaukee. And Tariq Moody, who hosts those, always does such a great job of including actions as well. When we're talking about this space, it can be really easy to get discouraged. And I think it's so cool to have hear about some of the impacts, but also hear ways that we can take action.
Those are so great. And Tariq and Adam, both networks, both friends. We've run in the same circles. It's almost embarrassing that I haven't asked them to be on the cast, but this will be like a good, like, I definitely want them on here. And Beth recommended you. So I will work for Tariq and Adam to get them on here. How about you? Obviously, we will link to the 889 guys, those because I have readers in India or listeners in India all over. 889 is our local radio station here in Milwaukee, but I promise you that what they're doing is global, right? The way that they are
Oh,
trying to impact, they are not only advancing Milwaukee, they are advancing the conversation around so many things. So we will link to those podcasts. Are there other resources, Beth, that have advanced your own thinking about culture and people at work?
oh gosh. I need to set some goals for 2021 to be reading more. And I think I need to dig back into some Brene Brown stuff. It feels like a time to revisit Brene Brown.
Yes. Yes.
um, so that's kind of my 2021 thought in terms of how I'm going to dig in a little bit more. I think I certainly need like a refresher in mindfulness and
Mm.
how to remain centered, because 2020 was a trip, but I think we've got a ways to go yet here.
Yes, like we are not right. Somebody said, I got interviewed for a podcast earlier today and they said, we're almost a year into the pandemic. And I just said, can we pause and let's just take a deep breath of that? Like, like that is a big thought. Like there's a lot to be
Yeah.
proud love that we're still here and there are lots of us who are not. So that's a moment to be proud of and grateful for. And also it's like, oh my gosh, because we really don't have a clear end in sight yet. So I think we need to balance that. And I love your approach to mindfulness. Is there something that you've used in the past or somebody, an app or a person that you've followed? I use Insight Timer. And right now I'm on the January 31-day timer for meditation, or the 31-day challenge
I
for meditation.
I will be honest and say this is an area where I've not seen like huge gains for myself, which is why it's one of my goals for 2021, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an area, and it's
Yeah.
so easy. It's kind of interesting actually, because it's so easy to kind of knock off the list in terms of your to-do,
Mhm.
but it's so important,
Yes.
especially when you have a big to-do list. So I'll definitely take your recommendation and maybe give that a try.
You know what? Those two, reading more, because I'm a ferocious leader, but I really like, I feel like last year shouldn't count. Like I'm almost gonna celebrate my 5 years out as an entrepreneur. And I'm like, I really feel like I should just start saying 4 because I didn't do that much last year besides trying to keep my baby safe and
Yeah.
me a saint. So reading more and meditating. And guess what? Every morning, 15 minutes of meditation and at least 30 minutes of reading before everybody gets up. Because I know if I don't do it first thing in the morning, and I didn't start on January 1st. We had a dog who had a horrible surgery, blah, blah, blah. I think I'm on day 18, straight 18
Hey,
days of at least 15 minutes of that and 30 minutes of reading. And I feel great.
that's amazing. I
Not
need to come
perfect,
up with,
but better.
well, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, right?
No way, progress over perfection, right?
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have to be inspired by that. I don't know if I'll be able to. I am not a morning person. Maybe mine will have to be in the evening when everyone's
Maybe, right?
asleep.
Find what works for you. I am a morning person. I say I'm no good. Don't everybody talk to me after 3 because it's like we're pretty much useless after 3 p.m. because I've been up since like 4. So, Beth, this has been very informative. I think we took a lot, I feel like, from a remote work perspective, from
Yeah.
the really tethering yourself and engaging yourself into the organization. And all you do for Northwestern Mutual, for the Milwaukee area, and for culture and people, because look, we all affect the culture of our employers and in our workforce by what we do every day. So, thank you for how you approach it and for the work that you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Of course, I'm sending you guys peace and progress.